I am Khadija Hardaway, the Vice President of Justice for Wyandotte, the Chair of the Social Action Committee at Grand Chapel AME in Kansas City, Kansas. And today I am talk show for What's Up Kansas City. And I have with me Beto Martinez, Executive Director of CleanAirNow. I am going to allow him to get a brief introduction about himself and the work that he does before we go into our conversation about his upcoming event tomorrow.
Thank you, Khadija. Thank you for the invitation. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am, like Khadija said, I am the Executive Director of CleanAirNow, an environmental justice organization here in Kansas City, which began in the neighborhoods of Armourdale, Turner, Argentine, right? Community members concerned about their health and the industrial pollution and the environmental health hazards that they were being exposed to and still are, right? And that's kind of how the organization started, a lot of environmental health work. And a little bit about me is, I'm also part of a national EJ organization, national coalition, really led also by the frontline organizations on the ground across the country. So the organization, CleanAirNow, and combine, I don't want to like elevate myself, but with that expertise that we bring is also of that lived experiences into our work are so important, because this is how we really connect, right, on the issues, because we know firsthand what it's like to live in a neighborhood with this investment, right, in a neighborhood where we're under resourced, no health care, there's a lot of issues. So that really is what drives my work, knowing that I lived those experiences. I grew up right across the street, 50 feet from a petrochemical facility. And I started organizing around my neighborhood, making sure that, there was representation for our hood, because we wanted to make sure that the community members were driving the decisions, not the polluters and not industry, right? So a lot of my work really started at the neighborhood level as well. And my own, right across the street. So organizing our local community. And so that is so important as we move forward in any decision making, that those people that are most impacted, they know the best, right? They are the experts, not your academic, not your political appointee, not your city council person who doesn't have any background in health or a lot of these issues on even how do you get to targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in local neighborhoods alongside the toxic air pollution that's killing our community members 20 to 22 years sooner than in other places. So I'll stop there.
So, I say let's get into it, but you've already started getting into it. One of the questions I have, and so you can educate me while other people are viewing and being educated, is that we hear the word climate change so much, and I look at that from a world perspective. But when I speak with you, it's neighbor to neighbor. Can you kind of tell us the difference between, how you associate what you're doing that's grassroots with the overall global projection of climate control?
Yeah, so a lot of the issues are really at the local level, right? We have heard, we need to act, act or look at it globally, but act locally. You might have heard that, and others really look at the polar bears, right? That are, there's an existential threat to the polar bears.
Right.
However, there are real people, humans dying every day because of the climate crisis, right? And how that's embedded into our work is really looking at the social, also the social factors when it comes to the health component and how it's associated to climate change, because those that are closer to the problem are the ones that are being impacted with health issues. So how our work really intersects is really through environmental health, community-led research, education, awareness, and using that information for also policy making. We're not a lobbyist organization, but we can use that information to advocate and sit at the table. So when we make the connection to climate change for our communities, it's been so important to understand not that global or that political messaging around climate change, right? But what's happening in their local neighborhoods, and they're seeing the impacts, and a lot of them seeing directly how it affects their health, because that is where they understand, oh, my kid is suffering from a respiratory issue associated with air pollution and toxic air pollution and the contributions to global warming pollutant emissions here locally in our neighborhoods, right? So they start making so it's broad, but we really need to start like thinking about it at the neighborhood level, because that's where we can really see like the benefits of mobilization of community members advocating for their local neighborhoods. So I'll stop.
So, we talked briefly about some examples, and some of the things we're talking about were like, old school buildings on both the Kansas and Missouri side that, need to be torn down or restructured, but they can't because they're full of asbestos. One of the other issues we talked about was lead in the ground. And then, of course, the petrol stations that just leave their pipes bare and cause, gas expulsion throughout the community that has been there for decades. Can you go into, because when you talk local, that's local, but all of these things collectively at some point relates to the climate, but locally it's really like systemically affecting poor people. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we call this environmental racism, right? We call it out how it is, because it's really, what has happened is that industry, government has made decisions for people of color, for over 100 years, right? Made decisions for us. And when we talk about these facilities, like you mentioned, or schools, right? I've also know that there's this investment, right? There's a lot of schools that go up for bidding to upgrade their school or get a new school. And there's a lot of barriers when it comes to these same communities, right? We're seeing even though there's even if they're part of the same district, right? Some of the more wealthier communities get their school first, and it's a big problem because I've been inside firsthand. I've been inside to the school a couple of years ago, Central Middle School. I think you shared some of that with me about Central Middle School.
I went to Central Middle School. Yeah,
I went there and by invitation, right? By concern people, but I went in there and I checked it out, and I did see the impacts, right? We actually walked in there with some personal exposure monitoring, just to not to like look at anything, but just wanting to understand. And this community in this school is so, it's a community, it's Black and brown, it's mixed, and we continue to see that the investment is made elsewhere, right? And so that's a form of environmental racism. But when you talk about the lead exposure, we know that it exists, right? Not just in our water, in our air, and I'll get into the airport. And a lot of us think about lead in like water, and also in the paint, right? That where people can put that in their mouth. But we're also not factoring in the impacts of local industry that's emitting lead into the air. And another example of legacy, I want to talk a little bit about legacy contamination, is these are pollutants that live in the environment way beyond their production. Or so if they were, for example, shut down a facility that worked with a lot of lead 30, 40 years ago, that can be so persistent in our environment. And the connection I'm trying to make to climate change is that, in Wyandotte County, in the Kansas City area, there was a flood back in the 60s, right? And all the industry, stockyards, the confined animal feeding operations underwater, right? So we know there's still a history of that in our local communities, in our soil. So it's in our soil, in our air, and our water, right? But we really look at it holistically. And to your point about, them making an excuse of why they can't really tear down a building or put up a new one, I think that we're in a place where there's a lot of new development coming up, and nobody complains about that. They just start developing, but not making it accessible to the communities that need it the most, further displacing them, right? That we see a lot of new development trying to move in. And so when we talk about the lead, yes, when we talk about lead, we need to be really careful that we don't
limit it to just
in the local neighborhood, right? We also got to look at, like you said, asbestos, right? That stuff can become airborne. I remember there was a moment where they were going to demolish a building in a different community, and we advocated and said, no, you cannot do it. There's neighbors that live right next door. All that, when that building comes out, that implosion is, if they were to knock it out, because there's different ways how they tear down buildings, right? But if there was an implosion, all that cloud, all that dust is going to get into their homes, whether you say no, because we also know there's a lack of energy efficient
Yeah.
homes everywhere, right?
So
And so,
no amount of air filtering is going to save you from that kind, because the minute you step out your door there, you're
yeah,
breathing it too.
yes, so that
Right.
continues to exacerbate. So there's different approaches, and I can tell you that we advocated to do it in a way that they had to cover the whole building and start taking in pieces, right? And make sure that the people that are working there also are equipped with the right gear. Because what's happened is that our community members that also live in these fence line communities, as we call them, fence line is meaning that anyone that lives in close proximity to industrial pollution, toxic pollution, from different sources. But these same community members are also working in these same spaces, when it comes to this demolishing or any industry. So we want to make sure that there's also a protection all across the board. So when we talk about lead, really need to think a bit of it more of, but yeah, it is an issue because we still have a lot of buildings that contain lead. But I think that when it comes to the climate crisis, we also need to look at those pollutants that we're not really measuring. And I can tell you that also, like in our community in Wyandotte, there's a lot of recycling facilities. I'm not talking about recycling for cans. I'm not talking about recycling plastic. I'm talking about big industrial crushers that crush anything. And when they crush these cars or anything, that it also emits metals into the air. And who is impacted? Those living closest, right? And there's
Right.
no way to the EPA to have to measure that locally, right? And I wanted to share that because it's not just what you think about water and air. We also have them in some of our dollar stores where a lot of the material that's sold, and there's research behind this, colleagues of mine have done in campaigns around the dollar stores, and the toxic uh, products that they sell, whether it's a kid's necklace that contains lead, whether it's that candy that comes from other places, and is not, it contains lead. And I can share that if you would like that document, Khadija. And it's important to look at that holistically because we think about this, but how do we protect our families too, right? And a lot of dollar
Right.
stores also show up in rural and also in our local Black and brown communities more than others, right?
Right.
A lot of this is, they also get incentives probably from the city or the local government to put in these spaces, but we really need to think of it holistically. Right? What is all these impacts that our communities are facing? And
So
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
not to cut you off, but we got limited time, and
Yeah.
I like to cram a lot of questions in a short period of time just to give people as much information as we possibly can. So you made reference to a couple of different things early on, which was lobbying and then putting your trust in your councilmen. Well, on the Kansas side, you have the commissioners and how they go about business. And then you also have the EPA. What kind of relationship does your organization have to those governments?
Yeah, so we're an organization that really advocate for also with their community, advocate for those health protections, right, from industrial pollution. So, for example, the Environmental Protection Agency, I can tell you that it's been, we do work at different levels of the EPA, whether it's the federal at DC or here locally. But I can tell you that we are always, showing up, community members testifying directly to EPA on rulemakings and regulations because we know that can have a direct benefit even to our local communities. And so the relationship with them has really been holding them accountable, right? That they need to do more to protect the health of community. They're not a health agency, but they have the tools to be able to enforce the laws, right, on these
Mhm.
polluters. And like I mentioned earlier, there's also research of the community's life expectancy being cut 20 to 22 years, by 20 to 22 years, so that's a significant number. And then when we talk about yeah, we do work with EPA. Actually, back in May, we had a community meeting where we invited the new appointee for the EPA Region 7, and we really opened it up for community to have that voice. Because the other thing that's happened, that community with so much struggles, there's also not that trust, right, with government. Because one of our community members told me, You know, one time when I went to the UG, they said, well, what do you want? What do you expect? You lived in Wyandotte. You know, this is the kind of messaging these local government people give our community members. So they want to do more, right? Make sure that they have the tools to be able to sit at that table. And so when it comes to the unified government, I think that we also have a working relationship with them, you know, to some extent, not saying that we're not in favor of, we're not in support of a lot of their decisions, of course, because they're not prioritizing health and the environmental justice or centering environmental justice and equity in any of this, right? In any of the plans or decisions that they're making. But I can tell you that through some of our organizing, they have been more intentional of looking at organization as an organization that can provide a set of very robust recommendations on different issues. And one example is we informed the Armourdale General Plan last year. And just to give you a context when it comes to policy, a general plan has to be done every 5 to 10 years, whether it's city or counties. They had not done one since 1979. So that's
Wow.
a big time, right? And that shows a level of, again, environmental racism that lives within our local government, right? And so our
Mhm.
recommendations were looking at the health first before even thinking of new industries. Not that we're opposed to industry, but there's industry that can be clean and it can be zero polluting industries and also has a direct benefit to the workers' health, right? And so the relationships with them have been that, you know, they said, hey, you all have data, you all have those lived experiences in the community. We want to give you a seat at the table. But I said, no, the community needs to be at the table. And then they hired consultants to help them draft the plan. Then the consultants reached out to us, and I told the consultants, wait a minute, you know what? And I told the unified government, we as a community are going to write these recommendations and submit our own report to you all, and then add it as an appendices to that that plan that you all putting together with the consultants, because we want to make sure that it's a living document, right? That they don't just like think about it and just forget about it, because we are going to
That's
accountable, right? And so
that's a very empowering approach.
yes, so now it's there. They have it in part of their documents. Nobody paid us 100 and K plus money to put this report, right? With no funding, but they pay the consultants. But we thought we know that it's important to have that information there, so we can look back in 2 years. What has happened? Did they do anything? So we continue to advocate. So, so yeah, there is a working relationship.
Can I speak to that? You know, a lot of times we elect people and we assume that they're educated in all of the areas, you know, of government or the different entities. You know, you have several different committees, and it doesn't necessarily mean because we elected a person that they have all the answers. And that's where we come in as constituents and provide plans and ideals that are fundamental and sound, which I think in a lot of ways, Wyandotte County is not used to. You know what I mean? So it's something that we at Justice for Wyandotte do constantly, is that instead of like fighting the problem, that we're going to come up with solutions and give you a number of solutions so that we can move on to something else. You know what I mean? I think that's very fundamentally sound. Glad to hear it. You know.
Yeah, the government hasn't had the solutions for our local communities. We have them. Community members have the solutions. They're the ones close to the problem, and they know firsthand those experiences, right? And so, yeah, I agree that community members are the experts, because our local, we elect people into office, and they say they're going to represent us. It doesn't always work that way, right? Once they get there, they like forget about the community, and they have other priorities, and whether it's just for them for their say, oh, I'm in this position. But I think you hit it right on, Khadija, that those community-led solutions need to be what informs a lot of decision making. And I wanted just to add real quick, something that we're also want to make sure that happens is that there's more transparency from the local government on both sides of the state line, right? Even the departments of KDHE and departments of natural resources, looking at their process where people can participate, public participation is transparent, because we know there's a lot of decision making that happens and no one ever gets a notice of it. They just build a new facility after the fact. Oh, we gave so much money to this facility to come in. Is it a clean facility? Is it furthering, continuing to harm the community? So I think that that's also very important, that we create a transparent process to make sure that our elected officials are actually doing what we want. Why we put them
Hold them accountable.
hold them accountable. Yeah.
So let's turn the corner to talking about community partners and how we ended up sitting at this table was through community partners. We met at a scholarship event fundraiser, just a couple of months ago, maybe a
Yes.
month and a half. And, piqued each other's interest, know that we don't have the same mission, but understand that we're very small in stature and that oftentimes the ideals and things that we come up are given token to someone else, and that we need to support each other, be the strength in numbers that our community looks for. I tell people all the time, many of the members of the environmental advocacy have helped Justice for Wyandotte. It's not their mission to do that, but they see the struggle that we have, and vice versa. So it definitely has been a pleasure to meet you, and I very much feel like I have been educated.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put that out there that, people are collaborating together, and putting together a stronger message, or a stronger foundation behind each other's message, so that not only is the message coming across, but the people who are doing the work get the credit for it as well. And
Exactly.
so that's what we're all about. And speaking with you, I know that's what you're all about. Reading that article that you sent me kind of hit the needle on the head. It was talking about environmental justice, but advocates in all germs, I think, experience that type of behavior, where larger organizations tend to get the credit for the message and the work that's being done by the smaller grassroots organizations. So I commend you on taking a stance and being very bold about that, because I've been taking a stance and being very bold about that as well. And it just seemed like it was a lonely island. But I greatly appreciate the confidence and reaffirming that, Justice for Wyandotte is being the right example and moving in the right direction, and that we have other members in the community that are doing the same likewise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to add, our work, when it comes to environmental justice, is really making sure that there's equitable, that the resources, that everything is equitable, right? Not just based on your skin color, who gets what, who doesn't, right? But the other thing is that when it comes to environmental justice, our work is very intersectional with all of it, right? Where there's a work that your organization is specifically doing, there's a direct tie to all that, because we are the same communities that have all these issues confounded upon us, right? Some of us don't have coming out of the womb as a baby, don't have already born with access,
Disadvantages.
with access disadvantages, right? And
Mhm.
so, it's a struggle, right? And all these things that we talked about these exposures, contribute to a lot of that as well. And so it's a lot, but I think that, I really appreciate you inviting me for this interview. And, maybe some other time we can talk more about what it means, like, to work with these big organizations that can be extractive and further harm communities, even further harm them,
Mhm.
and also, how we hold them accountable too. You don't just like say, hey, I'm a big organization, I want to do this and be the savior. No, this is not what we're asking. We're not asking for saviors. We're asking to you to stand behind us and let us lead, because we on the ground are doing the critical work. And so, like you said, a lot of them now with the administration at the federal, this is a political administration, right, saying we need to prioritize environmental justice. And there are these big organizations saying, oh, this is our move now. Let's go talk. Let's go bring in CleanAirNow and let's write them into a grant so we can like check the box and maybe we have access. Yeah, they might have that professional grant writer. We don't. And then they come at us after the fact, like, oh, we wrote into this grant. I said, no, wait a minute, no. You're gonna take us out of there because we never signed up for this. You never checked with our committee.
Right.
Not gonna move forward. But I know I know I'm long-winded, but I wanted
Yeah,
just to.
I like a good talker. I mean, I know that I don't have to fill a question with you. So, but I do have we do have to get on to about this event.
Man, yes.
So you can wrap up what you were saying, and then we'll move on to telling people about the event, what they can expect, what time it is, the location, and most importantly, where they can make a donation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So thank you. So, all this stuff that we talked about right now really is leading up to the event coming up tomorrow, Saturday, August 6th, from 4 to 6 in front of the federal courthouse in Missouri at 1000 Locust Avenue. This is not a political event. This is really a community event to uplift, reflect on the power of community, right? So we have organized, CleanAirNow has organized this event. We'll have speakers, some of them talking about climate and health, and some of them talking about housing issues, education. We'll also have some youth speakers. We'll also have a flow art performance by Flow KC. We'll have a demonstration, what it means, in a visual, what it means when we're fighting against our polluting government, or our polluting government, or polluter government, whatever, we'll have a little about that. And then we will also have, I know it's at 4 o'clock, and I know it's August and it's kind of warm, but it's really a moment to uplift, right? And like see the diversity and the power amongst us. It's like I said, it's not a political event. We're not targeting the federal court or anyone. We are really targeting ourselves as reflecting, uplifting, and to continue this work, because our work is from the front lines, and it needs to be we need to take time to reflect on the power that we have, right? And so this is especially why we're having this event. We'll also have a paletero. If you all familiar with a paletero, it's like
No, explain.
it's like you might have seen those ice cream paletero. They sell popsicles in a little cart, so they'll be there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then we'll
So
have.
will there be other food vendors then?
So we're not gonna have any vendors because we also had to get this different permit, and so
Yeah.
we're gonna have that's gonna be there for free for anyone. So we have a limited amount, but everyone, there's not gonna be a cost of that, right? We're also gonna have someone there'll be some food, like a snack, because between 4 and 6, like elotes, like corn on the cob, but like fixed up with some nice,
Oh,
so we'll have that as well. We'll have some swag from CleanAirNow swag. We'll also have a couple raffles, so you all can, and it's a free raffle. You don't need to pay into the raffle like some organizations. You got to pay 40 or 50 so you can be part of. No, this is really for the community, right? Making sure that they know that this is their space, right? And so there's no charge for anything at this event, no vending. And so and you asked,
so
for
my
donations, for
my 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 suggestions to people is to make sure you bring a lawn chair, an
yeah,
umbrella for shade, and some kind of cooler with water in it or something,
yeah.
just to make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah. We'll have water. We'll have water and some aguas frescas, so those flavored waters, like different. I think it's just gonna be like lemonade, but we'll have water and some other stuff, and then we'll have some swag, which I think everyone will be really happy with, like leaving with something, right? Like for example, if you didn't care about the topics that we were talking about, at least you'll make sure you leave with something, and always keep
Right.
right. Yeah, it's so important, right? It's like, how do we plant that seed? And sometimes, sometimes it takes a while to reflect on some things, but like I said, this is not just for the community organizations that are doing critical work, but also the community members that we advocate for are going to be there, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I invite everyone to show up, and I don't think I'm missing anything else. I think that it's tomorrow, so we're excited. Oh, our website is for CleanAirNow is cankc.org. We're not asking for donations for the event, but that's our
But
website, and it's we want to make sure that we're not asking for donations, but if you all want to, you can go to
I'll put the disclaimer out there for you. He may not be asking for donations, but as all of you know, this work is not easy. It's not incumbent upon us to be out here, but because we feel dedicated and because there's a need, somebody has to do it, and that has to be sustained. So I'm asking you to give a donation to this organization, and he can give the website again. Um, it humbles us all when we have to. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to, but when our barriers, our burdens are heavier than what they need to be, and you can help alleviate some of that burden that we carry by giving just a small donation. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you can open your heart with a donation.
thank you.
That's my spiel for you, because that's what I think,
Yeah.
and I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, our website is, like I said, CANKC, so kc.org, and there is a button there, I think, for donation. And then, you know, our website is not so updated. We need some work, but it's really showing like the levels of where we are as an organization, right? So maybe that donation helps us to find someone to help with our website. So always
There
think,
you go.
you know, so we are in those as a small organization, you know, we have a lot of growing pains too, you know, like, but we have a good team, and I'm so happy and humbled that I'll be able to share with everyone our team tomorrow. They're going to be there, and because, you know, they're so critical, and also from the community, right? And they look like
Right.
us, they look like the community, and have all these amazing experience stories to also share. Not that they're going to be sharing other stories tomorrow, but they are critical to this work, right? And so I really hope that everyone can make it, and, you know, yeah, I hoping to see thousands of people
Well,
tomorrow.
this has been very educational. I am very excited about tomorrow. People know me to toot my own horn with a toot toot. And this time I'm going to toot toot to you and CleanAirNow for all of the work that you've done and are continuously doing. There's something about consistency that I really, really respect. And so I respect your consistency. And I just look forward to not just working in advocacy, but just hanging out like we did at the fundraiser. It
Yeah.
was a good time. And I know tomorrow will be work, but it will also be a good time, you know, meeting people and networking. And I'm super excited about that. So thank you so much for just enriching me and adding to who I am.
Thank you,
You
Khadija.
too, to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't do that to myself for myself. But,
I know, but you deserve it.
all right. Thank you, Khadija. Yeah. So yeah, I'll see you there tomorrow.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.